everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it because I don't want this video to be too long and I have a lot that I want to talk about. If you watched my video last week, you know that I kind of touched on how I've been having some health problems, and that has ultimately been my inspiration to lead a natural and healthy lifestyle. So I'm going to talk about what I've been dealing with for the past 7.5 years and how I'm still dealing with it, because it's been quite a long process to figure out what is going on. Before I start though, I just want to give a fair warning to those of you who are of the male gender. This video is mostly directed towards women, but you know what? Everyone is birthed out of a woman, and some of you boys may be getting married to a woman one day. So if you don't have sisters or know about what goes on in a woman's body, today is the day if you want to keep watching. So just letting you know, I gave you a fair warning. So feel free to turn this off now or keep watching. It's up to you. Also, before I begin, this video is forcing me to be very publicly vulnerable in a way that has been really hard for me to even open up about with some of my friends and even some family members, and it's very, 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 very personal. I cannot express that enough, so it's a pretty big deal for me to be talking about this. My heart is pounding pretty fast right now, so with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and start the tale of my health problems. 7.5 years ago, I was 13 years old, and that was when God decided that it was time for me to become a woman. In other words, I'm going to be very blunt, and I'm just going to say I got my period for the first time. It was not fun, and I was really not excited to get it. However, my mom was like crying and like all that stuff, and she's like, "You're a woman now," and I was like, okay, well, I'm like in a lot of pain right now. Yeah, the first time I got my period, I remember getting really bad cramps. I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, if this is what it means to be a woman, I do not want to deal with this crap every month. And so I was pretty upset, and like, it was just, it was not a good day for me, but you know what, it happened. So as time went on, I would never know when my period would come. All of my friends who had their period too, they were like, oh yeah, I can nail it down to the T, like I'm gonna get it on August 12th or something like that. It's pretty nice for them. But me, I never ever knew when I would get it, so it would just randomly come. I would get really bad cramps kind of leading up to like the day before I would get my period, and then the first day that I would get my period was just, it's always been the first day that it has just like wrecked me. And so as time went on, my cramps got more and more painful. I would get really lightheaded, I would get hot flashes and the chills, I would throw up, and then I would eventually pass out because the pain is just too much for my body to handle. I would tell my doctor about it, and she's like, oh, you can take 4 ibuprofen every like 4 hours or something like that. Something absolutely ridiculous. And I was like, okay. And so I was literally popping so many pills in one day when I was on my period just to help the pain, but it wouldn't do anything. But usually what happens is when I feel so bad, I would have to have my mom either come pick me up from school if I didn't stay home that morning because I didn't catch it soon enough, or I thought today would be different and I could handle it. But it always happened where I would just not be able to function, and I would just cry and cry and cry and curl up in a ball either on my floor or in my bed. I literally just like lay there just writhing in pain, and not knowing how to make it feel better. It was very painful for the first several years that I got my period. So then 2.5 years ago, it was my senior year of high school, and I was about to graduate, gonna move away to college, but it got to the point where I knew that I didn't want to keep living this way because I wasn't gonna have my mom to take care of me and, you know, rub my back and just give all of her motherly comfort to me. Another side note that kind of adds into everything. I had perfect skin. Like, seriously, my skin was, not gonna lie, flawless. I never had like breakouts or anything up until I turned 18. I got really pissed because it seemed like my skin was working in the opposite way that your skin is supposed to work. Like, you're supposed to have acne when you're going through puberty and like have it through those pubescent years. But no, I had perfect skin when I went through puberty, and then when I became an adult, all of a sudden, my skin hated me. On top of all of my womanly problems, I went to a dermatologist because I was like, what the hell? My dermatologist kept prescribing me all of these different oral and topical medications. And I'm not kidding you, I tried pretty much everything that's out there. And it got to the point where my dermatologist was like, you're gonna have to go on Accutane because nothing's working. And I was very upset when he told me that because I have had friends go on Accutane, I've had family members go on Accutane, and I have seen firsthand how it really affects a person mentally. I had already been through a pretty rough time several years before that, just regarding some family problems. I knew that I didn't want to go back to a similar mental state. So I actually, when he told me that he wanted me to go on Accutane, there's consent papers, not just like 2 or 3, a full-on packet of consent papers that you have to sign before you're actually prescribed Accutane. I actually signed all of the papers, but I never went back in to pick up my prescription or to even go get my blood tested, because you have to do that before you go on Accutane. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going on Accutane. I am not doing that to my body. And I knew at this point that I wanted to go a natural route because I had been putting so many different medications in my body and I was just not down to keep doing that. So my mom found a natural and holistic doctor for me to go to, and I kind of told her everything, and she was like, alright, we're gonna get you allergy tested. She thought that my hormones were imbalanced, and she goes, well, if your hormones are imbalanced, then we are going to have to cut out all of the things that you're allergic to. And I was like, alright, cool. So I got my test results back, and turns out I'm allergic to at least 25 different foods, and I'm not exaggerating. Maybe I'll take a picture of this and put it on my Instagram story or something. This is it. This was my allergy test results, and as you can see, all of these are foods that she tested me for. All of them that have either green, yellow, or red on them are foods that I'm allergic to. After getting this back, I was like, alright, I don't want to do this. And so the holistic doctor that I was going to at this time, she said, alright, I'm going to send you to a nutritionist because this is hard to follow. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Like, what am I supposed to eat? Because this literally is everything that I eat. So I go to her nutritionist. I ended up losing about 10 pounds in a little over a month. And that 10 pounds was weight that I should not have lost. It was very unhealthy for me to lose that amount of weight. I went back to the same holistic doctor for like a checkup so she could see like how I was doing, and I was like, look, I am struggling. I'm basically starving. There's honestly nothing I can eat. My skin is still a piece of crap. I still get really bad periods. So then she goes, you know, I think you need to go on birth control. Are you kidding me? My natural and holistic doctor is gonna prescribe me birth control. In case you didn't know, birth control is not natural. And I was again very upset, and I felt like I wasn't getting anything answered. And I remember getting in my car after that, I called my mom and I was like in tears. I was like, Mom, I'm getting nowhere. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go on birth control. I don't know what I was doing. At this time in my life, like, I just did not feel normal. I did not feel good. I had zero self-confidence. The summer before I'm supposed to go to college, where you're supposed to figure out who you are and make new friends and be put in a whole new environment, I did not love myself. And it got to the point where there were so many times where I would have plans to go out with friends, and I would call them or text them and just be like, hey, I can't go. I would literally just give them some type of like bullshit excuse. But the real reason is because I just did not want to go out in public, and I did not want people to see me that way, because I was not comfortable with myself. I knew that birth control was not a one-size-fits-all type of thing, so I had a feeling I was gonna have to try like one or two different types of birth control before I could figure out which one best worked with my body. I ended up trying about 3 or 4 different kinds of birth control, all within the time that I was on it, and none agreed with my body. After I started birth control, I gained 10 pounds from my original weight. My body weight fluctuated so much, and that really messed with me. Mentally, I was very confused and angry. Emotionally, I was all over the place, but all of my emotions were severely and dramatically heightened. I realized that that holistic doctor was not what I wanted, so I found another holistic doctor who claimed to be natural. I go to her, tell her everything, and I'm like, I don't want to be on medication. And she goes, well, you know, I think the best bet for you is to be on birth control. And I was like, alright, so I guess since that's my second doctor to tell me to be on birth control, I guess I'll just stay. So I stayed on birth control for about a year, and it got to the point where I had kind of like an epiphany where I was like, I don't want to live this way. This is not who I am, and I can't keep being someone that I'm not. I was just not me. Being on birth control, it cleared up my skin, which was really the only good thing, but again, you know, it made me gain weight. My emotions and my mentality was not normal, and my periods were still just not good. I stopped taking it after about a year, and this was last May. So May of 2017, because I knew that I wanted to live a natural lifestyle. Medicine to me has ultimately seemed like a patch to put over a hole. You know, once the patch is put on, it takes care of the problem at the time, but if that patch were to ever come off, the problem's still there, or it may have gotten worse. So I went off of birth control. My skin became the worst it has ever been. My periods became the worst it has ever been. My doctor that I was going to was giving me all of these natural supplements, but once you read the ingredients, you know, they were chemically filled. But I was still taking them. I told my doctor I stopped going on birth control, and she was like, alright, well, I don't think that's a good idea, but you know what? It's your body, you call the shots. So then, that same doctor, she goes, I think you might have a hormone imbalance. You know, that's nothing new. I've heard that before, so I was like, okay, you know, whatever, I've been told that before. For women, I know for sure that, you know, we're made up of 3 main hormones: estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And progesterone is the one that really comes alive when we menstruate. So she was like, you know, I think you have a problem with your progesterone. So we did a hormone panel, and while we were waiting for those results to come back, I was still using this progesterone oil, which wasn't natural. We get my test results back, and my hormone levels were fine. They were 100% perfect. You know, I had been misdiagnosed. I had been treated for these things that was just not real. She had always tossed out several diagnoses, and she never like truly went into what they were, and so it was just kind of like, oh, well, I think you have this, I think you have this, I think you have this. But it was never like confirmed for all of these, and so I was getting very pissed. That same day when I got my hormone test results back, she goes, I think you have polycystic ovaries. Of course, you know, during the 7 years before that, before I was at this doctor, I had obviously done my own research, which you should never do, but you know, I did it anyway. And so I had Googled my symptoms and all of that stuff, and I knew what polycystic ovarian syndrome was, and otherwise known as PCOS. For those of you who don't know what it is, basically you have a ton of little cysts on your ovaries that burst, and it becomes very painful. It also means that you're at really high risk for uterine and ovarian cancer. It's also a high leading cause of infertility in women, meaning that you can't have kids. And so when she told me that, you know, it just kind of like stuck in my brain. She didn't change anything from what I was being prescribed to take. She didn't change my protocol or anything, she just told me that. And I'm not saying that I want to have kids now because I'm only 20. I don't want kids anytime soon, but you know, I've always wanted kids, and I've always dreamed about having my own family one day. You know, just being told that you probably have this thing that is going to make you not have babies it was really hard for me to hear. And my doctor, after she told me I have polycystic ovaries, she goes, I think your best bet is to go on birth control. I had felt very defeated because I felt like I was just going in a circle of not taking medication to being on birth control to not being on birth control to being on birth control, or being told to be on birth control. I was an absolute mess. So I got home, and this was in January of this year. Spring semester had already started at my college, and luckily I only went to a college that was about 2 hours away. My mom, I could tell my mom was just hurting for me. We talked about it, and we decided that it was best for me to move back home and do a semester online, just so I could figure everything out and you know, really try to get to the root of this. I needed to move back home to have the support that I needed, and my mom was really the main person to do that for me. If it were not for my mom, I know I would not have gotten through this, because every time I get my period and I feel like that, I get in so much pain. It takes me to a very dark place, because I can't live like that. I just can't. I can't do it. It has taken so much from my life. She has been my rock, and even though she doesn't understand, because no one really understands, and she knows how lonely it has felt for me, she has encouraged me, and she has loved me so much. She just has poured so much love into me. She knew that I needed to come up with a game plan for figuring out these problems. So the first thing that my mom had me do was go to acupuncture. I started going to acupuncture twice a week for about 4 months. It helped so much. It helped reset my body and kind of bring it back to its original state and the state that it's supposed to be in, just in the way that I function. I still had really bad skin. I still was so uncomfortable in my body. And because of that, I knew that self-love needed to be at the top of my priorities. It's necessary. It and it was very necessary for me at the time, and it still is. One way that I would do that is, and still do it, is I speak kind words over my body, and that has a lot to do with frequency, which I'm really excited to share that video. But speaking kind words, if you haven't seen the video Speak Nice to the Rice, you should watch it. I'll go ahead and link it down in my bio. Since I started, you know, living a natural lifestyle, it really has not been that long. It's only been about 7 months. But in those 7 months, like, my body has changed drastically and for the better. I started going to a legit naturalist. Like, she's for real. She understood the natural mentality that I desired and how I did not want to be on medicine, and she was right there with me, and I was so thankful because she was the answer that I had been looking for years. She also did a bunch of tests. Pretty much everything came back normal. I found out I have super low cholesterol, which is pretty much as bad as having high cholesterol. I also have like some random gene mutation, which is like super weird. We also did a sensitivity test. There is a huge difference between sensitivities and allergies. I had no idea, to be honest. I thought they were just kind of like the same thing, but they're not. They're like very different. But I got my results back. I'm allergic to candida and piperine, and a lot of those are like foods and stuff. Some of them, for example, are eggs, all kinds of potatoes, wheat, dairy, strawberries, carrots. So those are just to name a couple of them that came back. And then there was one third group. And that third group that I'm sensitive to is progesterone. I had been treated for a hormone imbalance. I had been feeding my body hormones. And you're telling me I'm allergic to my own body's progesterone. So basically what that means is every time I get my period, my body kind of attacks itself because my body is going to be producing progesterone, but it's also trying to fight that because it's sensitive to it. It is an autoimmune disease. There's some like really fancy name for it, and that's why, at least that's what we think as of right now, that why my skin is so bad. My skin has cleared up a lot since then. Right now I'm only wearing like a powder foundation, and not a whole lot because it's summer and I'm literally sweating right now. So my skin is still not 100% where I would like it to be, but it has gotten so much better. Like, my cystic acne, it was so bad, guys. Like, every single inch of my skin was like covered in cystic acne, and it's not like that at all now. I still have like some problem areas, but honestly it's not bad. I literally found this out a month ago maybe, and I started doing immunotherapy. So it's basically where I'm building up my immunity to those 3 groups. So I just started it like a couple weeks ago. I haven't noticed a whole big difference yet, but I'm gonna give it more time, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah, it's been really, really hard, and it still is really hard, but you know, that's just what I have to deal with, and if that's all I have to deal with, then I'm blessed and I'm so thankful. I have it pretty good. I have an amazing support system, you know, my mom, the rest of my family. I have about 4 friends that have really, really been there for me. You know who you are. You know who you are. I know it's kind of a lot, it's a long video, but it's been a long process, and I really didn't want to leave anything out, so that's pretty much it. Yeah, so thank you for tuning in, and definitely tune in next week for when I have my next video up on Wednesday. But yeah, thank you, and I guess I'll be back here next week.